الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وآل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي رب زدني علما اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما أما بعد. Respected brothers and sisters, everyone watching, everyone viewing, everyone listening, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today is inshallah fiqh lesson number 7, and in lesson number 6 we spoke about wiping over socks or leather socks, and also the concept of tayammum. Generally both of the topics were in relevance to dryness, and towards the end we rushed a bit just to end the lesson on time, and today bi'idhnillah tabarak wa ta'ala we'll be moving on to the next part of that chapter, which was wiping over casts or bandages. So the concept or the ruling of when someone has a bandage over a broken part, an injured part, a plaster, anything of that sort, that you have a piece of cloth or something similar to it on top of an injured part of your body, and now you need to wash it. So you need to do wudu or you need to do ghusl, and that part generally or normally you would need to wash it. What do you do now? Before we start that, wiping casts or wiping over bandages, just to quickly add to our previous lesson that it's not valid to wipe over a turban, cap, face veil or gloves. I think we said that last time. That's the last line here. I'm not sure if we said it or not. So bismillah, wiping over bandages. And we know that usually plasters and bandages are there for a medical reason. So they're not just there for fun. They're there for a reason. And it says here on page number 54 in Maraq al-Sa'adat, translation written by Brother Faraz A. Khan, if one has a broken or wounded limb, he may wipe its cast, bandage or dressing for as long as the excuse remains, even if it were placed on the limb while the person was in state of major or minor ritual impurity. So you don't have wudu, you need to do wudu. You don't have ghusl, you need to do ghusl. And all of a sudden something happens, you put a bandage on. What do you do when you do ghusl? You can't wash it because you might damage it, or you can't take it off. All you do is that you can wipe over it. You can wipe over it. It's going to come to that inshallah. It is not a condition to wipe the entire cast, although it is according to a weaker opinion. It is also not necessary to wash the exposed skin in between the wrapping of a dressing placed over skin where a venesection or the like was performed. So for example, you've got two close bandages. So first of all, whichever part you're supposed to be washing but it's got a bandage over it, you wipe over it. Okay, so if you're doing wudu, then your arm is bandages, wipe over it. But then imagine there's two close bandages next to each other. So 140 will explain a bit more inshallah. It says, rather one may wipe the exposed skin while wiping the dressing. This exemption from washing the exposed skin applies only if taking off the dressing would harm him, since if he were to wash the exposed skin, the entire dressing might become wet, whereby wetness could reach the wound and cause damage to it. If however he is able to undo the dressing, he must do so. Wash the uninjured skin and directly wipe the wound wet. Yet if wiping the wound would harm him, then he may leave it alone, and after washing the uninjured skin, rewrap the dressing and wipe the dressing over the wound. So basically, you've got a wounded part, you've got a bandage over it, you wipe over it. Now imagine you've got two bandages and they're very close to each other, and then you've got a gap in between. Okay, now he's saying to you, imagine it's a small gap. What should you do with that small gap? Do you have to wash it? Now if you wash it, what if the water reaches underneath the bandage and it infects it? So he's saying for that reason you just wipe over it. Is that the sound correct, inshallah, right? Yeah. So if it's in between two bandages, a small gap, you don't have to wash it. You just wipe over that small gap, because if you put water inside it, it's going to leak inside the bandage, and then you're going to harm yourself more, and that's not the purpose of wudu at all. And when you're injured, you have an excuse. Now if you are able to take the bandage off and it's not going to harm you, okay, so for example, sometimes we wear them gym material, like you wear something across your leg, like to keep it warm, or to squeeze it if you got arthritis or any other problem, or just in the winter you might wear something quite tight, or around your knee you might wear for jogging or for running.
Now these kind of bandages, you can easily take it off. So therefore you should take it off. Now we're talking about those bandages which if you were to take off would damage you or harm you or make your wound even worse. Does that make sense, inshallah? Okay. If a new cast or a bandage is placed on the wound limb to replace the older one, it is not necessary to wipe it if the original one had previously been wiped, yet it is recommended to do so. For example, you had an old bandage, you done wudu over it, you wiped over it, now you took it off, you put a new one on. Should you wipe over the new one as well, or is the old one's wipe enough? They're saying to you, or the book is saying to you, that the old one's wipe is enough. But if you, when you put the new bandage on, wipe again, it's good, it's recommended, it's mustahab, it's something good, you should do it. Like khufs, wiping the cast does not require an intention. So, say for example, I am doing wudu, and I have made the intention, or I've just started doing wudu. I never made an intention that I am going to be wiping over the cast or the bandage. That doesn't harm my wudu. You just wipe over it. Whichever part you can't wash, you just wipe over it. Khalas? Any questions so far about wiping over bandages? Because we're going to be moving over into a new topic. And if there are any young children, then maybe it's not recommended because it's more of an adult related topic, inshallah. And if you are, for men it's fine because you will be obviously educating your wives or your children or your daughters. And the chapter is about menstruation, haid, postnatal bleeding, nifaas, and any dysfunctional uterine bleeding, which is called istihaadah. It is basically, this whole chapter is relevant to our dear sisters and our mothers. And it is important for men to know this as well, so that you can advise your counterparts, female counterparts. And of course, if there are sisters watching, they can definitely benefit as well, inshallah ta'ala. So it starts off by saying menstruation, i.e. menstrual bleeding, hayd, is defined as blood that exists from the uterus of a woman free from disease or pregnancy after the age of adolescence. So a woman, she becomes baligh, okay, and the blood that exits from her body, from her private part, this is called menstruation, or the menstrual blood, the hayd, the blood that comes out monthly, once on a monthly basis for those who it comes out from. Its minimum duration is 3 days. So fuqaha, jurists have said that minimum amount of days that someone can be in the state of hayd is 3 days, 72 complete hours, while its maximum is 10 days, 240 complete hours. Its average is between the two. So average of hayd for a sister or for a female generally, and of course more relevant to female Muslims because that's when tahara and wudu and everything comes more relevant, is 5 days average generally. And the minimum is 3 days according to fuqaha, and the maximum is 10 days. And there are footnotes explaining every single point, whichever one may be a bit unclear. So if you have the book, then that's the benefit of it, inshallah. If the bleeding is for less than 3 days or more than 10 days, then the excess blood is not menstruation. It is not the blood of hayd. If it's less than 3 days or more than 10 days, it's not hayd. It's going to tell you what that means. Rather, it is dysfunctional uterine bleeding, istihaadah. So there is a difference between hayd, which is the blood itself coming out, and istihaadah, which is not the same thing. Istihaadah, the blood from it is not impure. We're going to come to that, inshallah. During the period of menstruation, i.e. its maximum 10 complete days, any color that is seen, as well as intermittent breaks from bleeding, again within the possible 10 complete days, is considered to be menstrual blood, thus preventing her from praying or fasting. So anything that comes out in that period, and it's called the period, sisters call it period. So whether it be 7 days or 5 days or 10 days, as a woman grows up, she starts to realize what's her average period, if it's 5 days, 7 days. Now within those 7 or 10 days or whatever is her normal number of days in which blood comes out, anything that comes out is considered to be menstruation, and therefore she can't pray, she can't touch a mushaf, she can't go into a masjid, and so on and so forth. The fast is considered menstrual blood, thus preventing her from praying or fasting. The fast must be made up if during Ramadan. So if in Ramadan a sister is in that state, monthly time as they call it, she must make up her fast. There's no excuse for that at a later stage, obviously when she's pure and when she can, as opposed to the prayers. Now this is a very, very big rahmah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that a sister, when she's in that situation, 7 days, 10 days, 5 salahs, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't ask her to pray those salahs again. She just misses it and that's it. It's only the Ramadan, which is only once a month. whichever days she misses, that she has to make up, because Ramadan there is no comparison for. But generally about the salah, if imagine she had to repeat the 7 days of salah after coming out of it every month, that would be a big burden upon her, and it would be quite difficult. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy and kindness that He has allowed that discount for them, and they don't have to pray those prayers. So instead, now you're not praying anymore. Does that mean, there is no concept of remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? No, not at all. Because as a Muslim, we should always try to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as much as we can. Okay, اذكر ربك في نفسك تضرعا وخيفة ودون الجهر من القول بالغدو والآصال ولا تكن من الغافلين. Allah is saying in the Quran that remember your Lord, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, okay, in yourself, in your heart, in your mind. تضرعا وخيفة, like in fear and in softness and out of fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you don't have to always shout your dhikr out. You don't have to always say Allahu Akbar subhanallah loudly. Quietly you can say it as well. And you don't have to raise your voice with it as well. Bil-ghuduwi wal-asal, in the morning and in the evening. So all day long you should be busy with remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And do not be of the ghafilin, those who are unaware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because when does shaitan get a chance to make you do wrong deeds? When you are unaware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you constantly remember that Allah is watching me, then you're not going to go towards bad deeds. So generally, if my sister is not praying, then you should still try and do adhkar. Say subhanallah, alhamdulillah, la ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar. There are so many adhkar. Say sallallahu alayhi wasallam, do salam to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Even Surah Fatiha and ayat of the Quran, if you do it as dua and not as Quran, it's still okay. So a sister's reciting Surah Fatiha for ruqya or Surah Al-Falaq for ruqya as a dua for protection, it's completely fine. Same thing with, for example, رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا. These are ayat from the Quran, but she's going to be reciting it as dua. So therefore, it's okay for her even though she's in the state of menstruation. The following things are also unlawful during menstruation when she's in the state of hayd. Those 5, 6, 7 or 10 days maximum, these are the things that are not allowed. Intercourse. Tawaf around the Kaaba is not allowed while she is in that state. Entering a masjid, or even if it's only to pass through. So for a sister, it is not allowed as far as the Sharia is concerned to go into a masjid during that period. And there are so many discussions behind why and so on and so forth. But generally, the essence of it, the crux of it is because the hadith say it, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says it, or the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says it. And that will be the ultimate main dalil for it. But then you can go into logical understandings of it. Why shouldn't a sister go into a masjid and so on and so forth. And obviously the discussion of why if she works in a masjid, but we don't want to open that door up completely now, because if someone was to ask the question, then we'd answer. We don't want to go into questions that haven't been asked yet. But generally she can't enter a mosque. Being touched from right below the navel to right below the knee. So anywhere between the navel to below the knee, she's not allowed to be touched directly. Obviously, this is talking about husband and wife now. Generally, no one else touches that area except for herself. But if you are married, then your husband is not allowed to touch that part unless it's got a covering on it. If it doesn't have a covering on it, then it's not allowed at all. Reciting the Quran is also not allowed. Touching a copy of the Quran unless with a non-attached barrier. We've spoken about non-attached barrier before. So she can't touch a Quran, or my sister, you can't touch a Quran unless it's with a cloth that's not attached to as a cover of the Quran. If her period ends within 10 days, but after the duration of her regular habit, she may not have intercourse except after one of the three things. Okay? So her period has ended. Okay? Within 10 days. So 10 days is maximum. After 10 days, she's not even considered to be in her period anymore. But within 10 days, her period has finished. But after the duration of her regular habit, she may not have intercourse except for after one of the three things. Let's understand this a bit. So normally she has a habit of finishing on the 5th day. The maximum number of days is 10 days. Normally she finishes on the 5th day. But then she finished on the 6th day, 7th day. But after the duration of her regular habit, this is what it means. She may not have or be with her husband after one of these three things. After performing a ghusl. She needs to have a ghusl, okay, if it's within those 10 days, after her habitual 5 or 6 days, then she needs to first perform a ghusl before she can be with her husband. Performing tayammum if she can't perform ghusl. So there is no water, she can't perform ghusl, she will do tayammum, and the rule of tayammum comes in. And the next point number 3, is a bit complicated. I don't know whether we should read it or not, but generally let's just read it through. If you can't understand it properly, it's not a problem, we can ask me later on. Missing an obligatory prayer which occurs if her period ends with enough time to at least perform the ghusl and say the tahrima before the prayer time expires. If that occurs, it is permissible to have intercourse with her afterwards, even if she did not perform the actual ghusl. If, however, the time between the ending of her period and the expiration of the prayer time is very slight or very less, such that she would not have been able to she would not have time to take the ghusl, coupled with the tahrima of the salah, Allahu Akbar, then she is not considered to have missed an obligatory prayer, and intercourse would remain impermissible. I told you it's going to be confusing. But generally, if she ends a few days after her habitual days and it's within the 10 days, then she needs to make sure she performs ghusl. Now, if it carries on, if her period goes past 10 days, it is permissible to have intercourse with her as soon as it passes the 10th day. So generally, if it's within the 10 days, she has to have a ghusl before she can be with her husband. But if it's after the 10 days, the ghusl is not wajib, it's more like mustahab. She should do it, it's good to do it, it's recommended to do it, and it's going to say on the footnote as well, inshallah. But she doesn't have to be with her husband, because her blood has definitely stopped, and even if he hasn't stopped, then it's not considered to be the impure blood. So if after 10 days the sister continues to bleed, then that blood is not considered to be impure and does not stop her from being with her husband. If her period goes past 10 days, it is permissible to have intercourse with her as soon as it passes the 10th day, 240 complete hours, due to the certainty that the menstruation is complete and that the extra bleeding is dysfunctional uterine bleeding. So it's not hayd anymore, it's istihaadah. Hayd is the actual impurity, istihaadah is the blood that doesn't make you impure. The minimum duration of tuhur is now the days of purity. The minimum duration of tuhur is 15 complete days, 360 complete hours. That's the minimum days. So a sister will be in a month at least pure for at least 15 days. Which means she would be praying her salahs in those days, she would be keeping her fast on those days, and everything that comes and required of her to do in Sharia. Yet it has no maximum duration. What does that mean? Minimum is 15. Maximum it could be the whole month, because some sisters don't have the menstruation anymore, or they don't have it at all, and it does happen. So generally there is no maximum, but the minimum is 15 days. Except when establishing a standard menstrual habit in a situation of continuous bleeding. Now, except when establishing a standard menstrual habit in a situation of continuous bleeding. 130. That is, the only situation when there is a maximum duration of tuhur is when a standard menstrual habit needs to be established, which occurs if a girl begins puberty with continuous bleeding. In such a case, she is given a menstrual habit of 10 days. And tuhur duration of the rest of the lunar month, namely either 19 or 20 days depending on the month. So basically, there is no maximum unless she has a habit. As in, she knows exactly how many days she's going to be bleeding for. But generally it's 10 days, that's the maximum number of days. For the bleeding, as we have said before. Postnatal bleeding, Nifaas. Now, there are different types of blood. So we have hayd, which is the monthly blood, Istihaadah, which is the the blood that's not impure and it doesn't stop you from praying. And then we have Nifaas, which is it's called postnatal bleeding, as in the blood that comes out after having a baby. Is defined as blood that exits after delivery or after most of the baby has exited. Okay, so before most of the baby exits the body, it's not called Nifaas. It's just general impurity, general impure blood which you can wash off and you can still pray. So say for example the question comes up, someone's coming up to the day of due date, and she is, for example, she is releasing different kinds of fluids, and that happens, mucus plug, and different fluids come out, and the question comes up, even some small amounts of blood might even come out. What does she do? Does she stop praying? No, the answer is you wash it off, you do your wudu and you pray. Khalas, you do your wudu until you are in the state of Nifaas, as in the baby is you're in delivery basically. Even after miscarriage of a fetus, whose body had some sort of physical development, and in the footnote he will tell you that if the fetus, and it was a miscarriage, the baby didn't have any physical development, no hand, no face, no ears, no legs, and the sister gives birth to something like that, or there's a miscarriage with that kind of a fetus, then that is not considered. Let's just read it, inshallah. It says, physical development. 132 says to you, such as a hand, foot, finger, nail, or even hair. If no physical development appears on the fetus, it is not deemed a baby. In that case, the blood that exists afterwards is deemed menstrual blood if it lasts 3 full days. So it goes into the conditions of hayd. It has to be 3 days at least for it to be impure, and was preceded by a complete tuhur since her last menstrual period. Otherwise, it is deemed dysfunctional uterine bleeding. So basically, a fetus came out. You never had any physical development. If it has physical development, then it's considered to be Nifaas. Okay, it doesn't have no hand, no face, and no legs whatsoever. So now what do? She is going to be considered to be. Considered to be. It is deemed. In that case, the blood that exists afterwards is deemed menstrual blood if it lasts 3 full days. So the blood has to last for 3 days. Then we will know that this is Nifaas. And also, before the baby coming, or the fetus coming out, or the miscarriage happening, there has to be a full, clean month. As in a month in which she didn't bleed. Why? Because that's to establish that she was pregnant in the first place. Because for her to be having a baby developing inside, she would have been in health and a clean time, she wouldn't be bleeding anyway. So that's generally the rule, inshallah. And of course, for sisters, if they want more clarification, there are so many forums for fatwa. You can call in for advice, and no problem at all, inshallah ta'ala. Postnatal bleeding has no minimum duration, while its maximum duration is 40 days, 960 complete hours. It is from the first of twins. 2 babies, the first one comes out, your Nifaas starts. Its ruling of postnatal bleeding is like that of menstruation, of hayd. So you can't pray, you can't keep your fasts. Okay, the prayers you don't have to make up for, but the fast you have to make up for. So it's the same ruling. The following cases are considered to be dysfunctional uterine bleeding. So now we've spoken about hayd, the monthly period. We've spoken about the Nifaas and the rulings of it, and now we're going to be talking about the blood which comes out but it's not actually impure. It's Istihaadah. Any bleeding of a pregnant woman, even bleeding during delivery or before most of the baby has exited. So any bleeding until the whole baby has come out is considered to be Istihaadah, and it's not considered to be Nifaas. Okay? Bleeding after delivery for more than 40 days. So 40 days has finished since she gave birth. Okay? After the 40 days, all the blood that comes out is not impure. It's Istihaadah. She is supposed to pray. She is supposed to keep her fast. She can be with her husband, and so on and so forth. If she bleeds past her normal habit of either menstruation or postnatal bleeding, and the bleeding exceeds the maximum duration of either one, in that case, the bleeding after the duration of her habit is considered dysfunctional uterine bleeding. So for example, a sister has a habit of bleeding for 7 days in a month, or normally after having a baby, she bleeds for 30 days. And she's got a habit of doing that. She knows that every month, 7 days. Nothing more than that. So now that's established to be her period. Anything for her who has established a 7-day period, anything after the 7 days is considered to be istihaadah, and it's not impure. And same with the sister that has a habit of bleeding for only 35 days after giving birth. Anything after that habit has been established is considered to be istihaadah again. Any bleeding of a girl that has not yet reached adolescence, so not a non-baligh girl, a young girl who has not become baligh yet, if she bleeds, then that's not considered to be something that's going to stop her from praying, for example, or touching the Quran, or going to a masjid, and so on and so forth. Dysfunctional uterine bleeding, istihaadah, is like a continuous nosebleed in its legal ruling. It does not prevent the permissibility of fasting, praying, sexual intercourse, or tawaf. In such bleeding, if such bleeding continues for the duration of an entire prayer time, then the woman must perform wudu at the beginning of each prayer time, just like someone with a chronic urinary incontinence, constant diarrhea, constant gas release, or continuous bleeding. We know this ruling, or we don't? If someone has he's got a problem of gas, like he keeps on letting out wind, and he can't hold his wind for more than one salah, it just keeps on coming out. So now he's got an illness, and same thing with, it might be urine or anything else, right? Or even nosebleed, or whatever the case may be. In that situation where we have established that this person can't pray one salah except that the blood comes out, or wind comes out, or urine comes out in that time once at least. So for that person, there is a special exemption in which Sharia has said to you that you just do wudu at the beginning of the time. So dhuhr time has come in. At the beginning of dhuhr time, you do your wudu and you can recite Quran, pray as much salah as you want in that entire dhuhr period, even if it's fard, nafal, anything. Even if it's more than one salah, you can recite, even if you're bleeding or urine is coming out or gas is coming out. This is a special exemption for people with a medical condition. Okay, so Istihaadah is saying, he's saying that Istihaadah is the same case. If you're bleeding and it's not stopping, then what you do is you do wudu at the beginning of the prayer time and you continuously pray until Asr comes in or Maghrib. That's when you renew your or refresh your wudu, and all salahs, all qira'ah in that time is considered to be allowed with that same wudu. So far so good, inshallah. Okay. If such bleeding continues for the duration of an entire prayer time, then the woman must perform wudu at the beginning of each prayer time, just like someone with chronic urinary incontinence, constant diarrhea, constant gas release, or continuous bleeding from any part of the body. There are three conditions for people with chronic excuses: the condition of establishing the excuse, the condition of its continuity, and the condition of its termination. There are three conditions for people who have got an illness that does not allow them to have their wudu for one salah. Here it's going to say it, inshallah. The condition of establishing the excuse is, as stated above, is for the excuse to continue for the duration of an entire prayer time. Is for the excuse to continue for the duration of an entire prayer time, such that the person is unable to perform wudu and prayer without the occurrence of the excuse. So I can't quickly do wudu and pray 2 rakats. That means I have got the excuse. Afterwards, the person is considered chronically excused, and therefore he may pray any amount of obligatory or voluntary prayer after having performed wudu with it, the excuse, despite the occurrence of that excuse after the wudu. The wudu performed in such a state is invalidated only by the expiration of the prayer time. Quite clear, right? Now the condition of establishing the excuse. Someone, are you allowed to make only one wudu for the whole prayer time even though you got gas release or urine release? The condition of establishing that is you have to be in such a situation where you cannot do wudu and pray, except that it happens once in that period. So when you have established that excuse, you can make wudu for one waqt of asr or salah, whatever it is. The condition of its continuity of the excuse is its occurrence in every prayer time afterwards, even if only once within each prayer time. So now, I had this illness before. How do I know I'm still in the same excused situation? Well, it has to carry on repeating in every prayer time. Okay? Even if it's just one, in every prayer time you have this inability to control your wind or just bleeding, then that's considered to be an excuse and you can carry on doing what you were doing of one wudu per waqt. The condition of its termination, whereby one is no longer excused, is for a prayer time to elapse without a single occurrence of that excuse. So someone who got a gas problem, a whole prayer time of Asr or Maghrib or Isha has gone by and yet you have not, released any wind, and therefore you are not in that excuse anymore, inshallah tabarak wa ta'ala. And now we have come to page number 59, and the next chapter is types of filth and purification from them, which is a new topic bi'idhnillah tabarak wa ta'ala, and we will be starting that bi'idhnillah on Thursday coming, inshallah. May Allah accept from everybody. Any questions? It's quite simple. It's relevant to our sisters, and of course if you think this video is going to be of benefit to anyone, especially sisters, because maybe this is a topic that's not discussed so openly or not so accessible unless you're someone in an alimi course or something. So if you think this may be of benefit among sisters, you can of course share it, no problem, inshallah tabarak wa ta'ala. May Allah accept from everyone and give us the ability to do everything for His sake only. Subhanakallahumma ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.